Good morning, everyone. Amine Houyou, and I'm one of the co-leads for the connectivity framework. This part of the presentation is going to tell us a little bit more about what the connectivity framework is supposed to answer. For now, you've seen this figure before. The connectivity framework is, let's say, the glue between all the different DCNs and the applications that are hosted on them. Maybe also the applications that are hosted elsewhere, whether in the cloud or in advanced computational elements. And the goal here is really to make all the data that we have from the OT world exposed through a common way. And also, since we're talking about defining an interface, this is, for today, or what we have decided to select for that, was really a standard that is seen today as a gateway to all the OT world, which is OPC UA. So the choice was not just about deciding how to make an OPC UA companion spec, but actually we did an analysis. How does OPC UA today, and also with the developments that are followed by the OPC Foundation, really fulfill the requirements from an OPAF perspective? Since for release 1, we had to focus a little bit on what we want to have, at least as a minimum set of functionality. First, we wanted, as I mentioned, expose data that is coming from an OT world. So we had to also talk about what kind of data we're trying to expose. So we speak about exposing I/O data first, whether it is digital, analog, and make it available to consumers wherever they are. So making DCNs across, let's say, vendors and across multiple platforms talk to each other and have the ability to use the OPC UA framework with all its functionality, whether it is discovery and things like that, to actually access the data. When it comes to the release candidate, and it's important to stress that this is a preliminary release of the version 1, in the sense that we do like to hear from you and also from those that will look into the standard, because this is the first part where we actually have a very thorough referencing of OPC UA and actual standard that you can build a product out of. This is something that a vendor will go and look at, and they will know exactly what they are required to build. So the way this is written is, as I said, is an OPC UA companion specification. So we build on OPC UA components. We also use a common information model in order to ensure the interoperability. That's the basis of what OPC UA requires, all these companion specifications that are defined in different domains to start with. The information model, as I said, which we focus on, is really just a representation of how do you expose the I/O data. So that is the first thing. Then we went into looking into all the communication infrastructure offered in OPC UA in order to make it part of our latest release. So those that fulfill the interoperability requirements are now part of the companion that we wrote. And then the other mandatory thing and the new parts that we made, let's say, obligatory and mandated it as part of our OPA standard is what also Camilo mentioned. There are many optional security aspects or security facets, as to use the terminology from the OPC Foundation, that really go into details of how to use the latest, the best in class in terms of securing the communication, but also securing, let's say, things like the users, applications, and adding a lot more security intermediate steps. And we made those mandatory as part of our companion specification. So it's not longer optional, but it is something that we mandate. So the two main profiles that address interoperability so far between the DCNs are listed there. There is one which only focuses on those devices that will continue use the client-server model in terms of communication. That's well understood, well established, and also something that has been around for a while. The latest profiles from OPC UA, where the latest release from 2017 is referenced here, besides all the additional optional things that we made obligatory here, including the security aspects. Then when it comes to the second profile, which kind of, you could assume that this is a more open way to expose the data and also to write consumers and applications that expose and both consume the data. We add to the client server references, we add the publish subscribe new profiles. And the publish subscribe profiles, you could say, is the first, let's say, way that OPC UA has chosen to also adopt all the IT approaches that allow flexibility in terms of subscribers and in terms of also going up with a larger scale. So with these two profiles, these also will have resulted into the conformance units that we specify, so you can go and actually build the first prototype based on those. And this is what we are also willing to take your feedback in terms of how does the standard really fulfill your expectations. With the communication infrastructure already provided, as I mentioned, we had to go back to the information model. And since we are only talking for now, at least in exposing a certain type of information, we've already talked about exposing boundary signals. And, but we also created, let's say, the framework that could be expanded later on. So there's an information model that is expandable to include additional types of signals, additional type of things that go beyond just the I/O information. And that is something that, that is also part of the release. And it is added, let's say, to the companion spec. And it is something that the open group working group came up with. This is not part of, let's say, this is not referenced in OPC anymore, in a sense. Well, we then also included our additional optional aspects like the communication infrastructure to exposing alarms, condition facets, and also historian. There is a lot still to continue on defining the information, the configuration part of all these aspects that we are going to address next in the next version of release. Thank you very much.